With the Razr 50 Ultra or Razr Plus in the US, Motorola has launched one of the most impressive flagship clamshell foldables to date, but has it done enough to topple the champion, Samsung's Galaxy Z Flip 6? And can that cover display make up for any other weaknesses? I'm Cam Bunton, this is Trusted Reviews, and in this video I'll answer those questions and more. First up, let's talk design, if only because there are many ways to look at it. There's the way they look, the way they feel in the hand, and how durable they are, and which of those you prioritize might just make your decision for you. Samsung's phone is more compact. It's a little slimmer, shorter, narrower, and the tiniest bit lighter. That of course impacts how it feels when you're holding and using the phone, but just as important is the shaping. Samsung's phone has completely flat edges with a matte finish, where Motorola has the complete opposite, shiny, curved edges. And there are benefits to both approaches. Motorola's phone has more of a palm-friendly feel to it. That's because as well as those rounded edges, it's got a textured vegan leather on the back, which is grippy and warm, in comparison to the flat, frosted glass on the Samsung. In short, those textures and shaping just help it feel a bit more inviting to hold and to use every day. The minimalist approach from Samsung is colder and harder. However, there's a very real sense that Samsung's does feel sturdier, and like it'd handle impact a bit better than Motorola's. Opening and shutting the phone, the hinge has a smoother, more controlled feel to it. Motorola's feels that tiniest bit looser and wiggles a little more, but in truth there's not a huge amount in this, at least not after a couple of weeks of use. Over a longer period of testing, of course, things can change, but we haven't got to that point yet. The Samsung hinge also seems to find it easier to hold steady at different angles, where the Motorola sometimes seems to want to snap open or snap shut. And Samsung's edges being matte instead of shiny means scratches and fingerprints just don't show up, where the Motorola gets covered in smudges pretty easily. Adding to its durability factor, the Samsung has IP48 resistance, meaning it's just as water resistant as the Motorola, but has better protection against dust getting inside the phone. So when it comes to design, it really isn't all that cut and dry. I'd say go for the one that you like the look of the most, but if you want the most compact or the most durable, the Samsung is the best choice. There is one area the Motorola really does outshine the Samsung, and you probably guessed already, it's that 4-inch cover display on the outside of the phone. It takes up so much space, where Samsung's has remained largely the same as the previous Flip model. And that size makes a huge difference to how convenient it is for using it to do stuff that isn't just swiping through weather, calendar, and stocks widgets. While it is better for that stuff too, since graphics can be more detail rich, it's when you use it to do normal app stuff that it really shines. Loading up Google Maps, for instance, where you want to navigate somewhere on foot and check for the next turnings without having to open the phone. You can just see more, and the layers of the interface are far less cramped. Similarly, typing on the on-screen keyboard in WhatsApp or Messages is again less of a cramped experience. It almost feels the same as typing on a primary display. It's just easy, you get lots of space, and your fingers don't trip over themselves as much as they would on the Samsung. And of course, when you're using it as a camera viewfinder, you can see more in the frame easily. In short, it's just better than Samsung's. There's no contest. To the point where I would use that cover display for easy, quick, convenient interactions, where for the Samsung I was more inclined to open it up and use the main display on the inside. Which leads us nicely there. And in my testing, I have to say I was a little underwhelmed by Motorola's compared to Samsung's main display, because whatever film is on top of Motorola's display, it just doesn't seem as effective at cutting out bright light and reflections as Samsung's. And so what I found when testing the cameras, for instance, shooting videos and photo outdoors, the Samsung screen was always more visible and easier to use for framing shots than the Motorola phone, especially when looking at it from awkward angles. And this was with both at maximum brightness out in bright daylight. In fact, even indoors away from bright light, the Samsung seemed brighter and cleaner when viewing it from any angle that wasn't directly head on. Look at them head on though, and there's not that much difference at all. They're both brilliant, vibrant displays. Of course, neither really competes with a traditional glass flat display that you would get on a normal smartphone, but the Samsung was more consistently clear from every angle. As for the creases, well, both are visible with the screen off. To me and anyone else that I showed it to, the Motorola seemed more obvious, but they're both pretty subtle and don't really get in the way. Otherwise, in general usage, there's a lot of value and benefit in having that larger 6.9-inch display on the Motorola phone. The extra width makes it more practical for everyday usage, whether for consuming media or replying to messages. But anyway, let's move on to talk cameras, and here again you're faced with the decision based on how you tend to use your phone cameras. Both have two lenses on the front and both primary cameras are 50 megapixels. However, it's the secondary cameras that mix things up. Motorola ditched the ultra-wide and stuck a 2x zoom camera on it instead. Samsung stuck with that ultra-wide, which means if you want to zoom, you're forced to rely on sensor cropping and AI processing for those zoomed in shots. But what that means in any situation then is that if you want a really wide shot to fit as much of the scene in as possible, the Samsung allows you to do that better. But thanks to the aforementioned sensor cropping, you can zoom to 2x and still get a relatively sharp image. Detail does start to fall off a bit if you push further than that, especially if light levels start to drop. And at 4x zoom, you can see the texture on the Samsung and the Motorola both start to drop off a bit, with the Motorola doing a little better at retaining some of the natural textures here. Zoom further on either and the results don't inspire at all. And if I'm honest, I was a little surprised that the zoom results from the Motorola weren't always significantly better than the Samsung, because it has a dedicated zoom camera. Sometimes, for instance, for closer objects, I found that the Samsung could be sharper and cleaner. Motorola just seemed a bit inconsistent. One minute it would be a really sharp image and the next it would struggle to focus or give me a grainy shot. Comparing images in general though, there were a few things that I noticed, and most of them point towards Samsung having the better camera hardware and the better processing. Motorola a lot of the time tends to over-egg any red or warm colours. And so bright orange flowers and leaves or sunsets, for example, get oversaturated to the point where texture is completely blown away. Samsung controls these much better. And for the record, this is without any scene optimization features enabled. Samsung images did seem a bit crisper, with colors that more closely resembled what I saw with my eye. The Samsung also seemed to do better at focusing on objects that were closer to the lens. Or at least it was easier and more consistently reliable if I wanted to take a close-up shot of a flower, bugs, or that kind of thing. Now, while Motorola does tend to overcook the warm colors, Samsung pictures often have a bit of a green tint, and sometimes oversaturate things like grass in landscapes, while also giving an overcast grey sky a blue hue, which definitely wasn't there in real life. But it retained details in highlighted areas better most of the time. Samsung has stronger video performance as well. Its HDR in video recording was better at controlling bright skies in the background from the external or the internal cameras. And the footage was smoother in terms of both stabilization and that rolling shutter jittery effect that you get when panning across a scene quickly. I will say this though, both phones do have decent cameras, but if I was to choose one for ease of use, consistency, and the images that I preferred most of the time, I think the Samsung does it better. But if you do get the Moto, I don't think there's too much to complain about here. Now, I'll keep thoughts on software brief, because otherwise this video is going to get ridiculously long. But Motorola's software is cleaner, it's got less bloat, but it does have lots of additional useful features like gestures for launching the camera and the torch, plus different standby modes for the cover display when it's sat on your desk, among other things. Samsung has a lot more bloat, has a very unique skin that's not like a clean version of Android at all. However, Samsung will get you updates for 7 years. That means even after you've handed it on to someone else, it will still get updates and security patches. Motorola will only give you 3 years. You get various AI features on both, but let's just say I've not found a genuinely convenient use for any of them that I can't do better with Google Gemini, ChatGPT, or Google Photos, which I can install on either phone. Now, before I wrap this up, it is worth discussing performance and battery life, at least for a little while, because both of these phones are powerful and fast, and Samsung again has the upper hand slightly. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 inside means it can cope more easily with the demanding games and benchmarking tests than the Motorola can with the Snapdragon 8S Gen 3. Still, for everyday use, casual gaming, and typical functions, you'll have a fast, smooth phone regardless of which one that you pick. The benefits of the Samsung probably won't be immediately clear unless you go to play 20 or 30 minute long sessions of Genshin Impact or Call of Duty in their high settings. If you do, with either phone I found that they can get quite warm in that top glass portion of the phone. So neither enjoys the experience as much as some of the more traditional, powerful smartphones do. Where the Motorola has one clear advantage is in charging speeds. It can refill at 45 watts, which with the 4000 mAh battery inside means a full refill in under an hour, or a 62% charge in half an hour. Samsung's 25 watt speed limit can't match that, and because of that battery size being identical, performance is similar on both. They'll comfortably make it to the end of a full day with about 10 or 20% left over for heavier users, with about 5 or 6 hours of screen time split between the internal and external displays. Now, in the end with these two phones, it's a little bit of a case of my heart saying one thing and my head saying something completely different. If you want the phone that I think makes the most logical sense as an actual purchase, I think the Samsung is the better overall choice. It feels more durable, will get software support for much longer, has better cameras and a better internal display, and is slightly more powerful too. It's the phone that if you push me to say which one was better, that's the one I would pick. Plus it will likely hold its value better than the Motorola as well. However, that cover display on the Motorola is genuinely really convenient and a joy to use. I loved using the Razr, and holding it was much nicer thanks to that leather-like rear texture and the rounded edges. If you see yourself valuing those features the most, definitely grab the Razr. Plus it's cheaper, comes with more storage as standard, and ships with a charger and a cable, and with some versions a case and a strap, for a price that is a little lower than the Samsung phone. If it had better camera performance, had a more long-lasting approach to build and software, it would be without question the best folding flip phone on the market. Let me know what you think of these two phones in the comments down below. Are you going to go with the safe choice, the Samsung, or are you going to take a plunge and go with something a little bit more interesting from Motorola? You can let me know in the comments below, or you can grab me on social media. I'm @CamBunton. If you did like this video, please do leave a thumbs up, subscribe, and tap that notification bell, and I'll see you again in the next one. Thanks so much for watching. Bye bye.